Greetings, felch in the time and space. It's your host, my Shadow, and welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to some more of the great Ace Attorney Chronicles. We're going to continue where we left off in the last episode. We have gotten the Beat couple here, and they are about to give us our first witness testimony for the case that we were on in the last episode. So without further ado, let's get started right away to today's adventure and see what's in store for us. Allons-y! It was our wedding anniversary, and Rolly was taking me out for a meal. There was no time to change after work. Anyway, two silhouettes appeared out of the fog on the pavement in front of us. All of a sudden, one of them just collapsed on the floor. Then the other scattered something before running off. We ran straight over, of course, and then went for help at a nearby police box. It was definitely that Japanese man in the dock. Rolly and I both saw him as clear as day. And he didn't say a single thing. He was asleep for all of that. Well, this is extremely compelling testimony, I must say. Oh dear, this policeman and his wife are claiming to have positively identified Mr. Natsume at the scene. If their testimony is true, the alternative course of events that you established in the summation examination will be quashed. It's death knell, in fact, because that alternative was never viable in the first place. What an unfortunate chancing, and on your wedding anniversary, too. Oh, I know. But I still managed to go out for the evening with my man. I thank the Lord for that. Gosh, the life of a London bobby sounds very hard indeed. Indeed. However, this cross-examination will be over in minutes. You may well have time to rest this afternoon. What do you mean by that? My learned friend, the witnesses saw the face of the man fleeing the scene. They are testifying under oath that it was without a doubt the accused, Mr. Soseki Natsume. And one of these witnesses is a policeman, no less, so you appreciate the gravity of the situation, I'm sure. Except that the man's so tired, his wife has to do all the talking. Enough preamble. Counsel for the defense, commence the cross-examination, please. Yes, my lord. Okay, I didn't see anything that stood out, so we're going to press on everything and see what comes up. Hold it! No time to change after work, you say. Are you also a member of the police, Mrs. Bede? Oh no, sadly not. It's a job for strapping young men only. Women, children, and the elderly can't even apply. Well, I think you could probably see why children and the elderly can't do the job, can't you? I think Rolly looks ever so handsome in his uniform. He sees you down to the ground, doesn't it, darling? What? I just finished my beat. Pat and I were headed back to the station. I was actually planning on getting changed there. Is he talking in his sleep? This is creepy. Oh no, Rolly, I must prefer you in uniform. Sometimes I don't recognize you when I see you in plain clothes. Oh dear, that doesn't seem healthy. It doesn't. Kindly adhere to the point. You were going for a meal after you had finished your beat for the day, correct? That's right, Saw, yes. Although I was fit to drop, to be honest, after spending the whole day on my feet. The police is my life, sir. As long as I'm the proud owner of this, I'll serve my city and my queen to the end. What's that now? My warrant card, sir. Proof that I'm a London copper. It has the noble founding principles of the force written on it as a reminder to all us policemen of our sworn duty. To patrol the streets of London town and uphold the peace of the common man. Sir! And for such a noble cause, I cover 20 miles every single day without fail and without a grumble. Because I know that the plotting of my boots is all Londoners need to hear to feel safe and secure. So, fighting crime doesn't appear to come into it, then. But, sir, this wasn't that one particular day. I was looking forward to celebrating my wedding anniversary. Mrs. Beat puts up with a lot being married to a bobby like me. I want to show my dear wife how much I care. Oh, Pat. Oh, Rolly. Oh, God. Gag me! Oh, what a charming couple. Their young love is such a joy to behold. Sure, where's my young love? If a little over the top, perhaps. And then, kindly describe what happened next. Anyway, two silhouettes appeared out of the fog on the pavement in front of us. Two silhouettes? That's right. They were coming towards us, walking up Briar Road in the opposite direction. There was a rather plump figure followed by a scrawny, thin-looking man. It does sound exactly like the victim as pictured in this print, and like Mr. Natsume. Yes, unfortunately, it does. And you're certain that at the time, there was nobody else up nearby? Oh yes, quite certain. It was dark, but there are streetlights on Briar Road, you see? There was nobody else around at all. Isn't that right, my darling? What? Oh yes, that's right. Of course, there was a light fog on the ground. The Briar Road is dead straight, and you can see a fairly long way down the pavement. And then there's the street lighting as well. I didn't see any other pedestrians. And he's asleep. Before sleep takes a firm hold, your answer please, Mr. Beat. Are you quite sure of what you've just said? Yes, sir. As a cop who spends all day every day keeping watch on the streets, I'd swear to it, sir. I am as sure as my love for Patricia is true. Yeah, I am not reading this. They're still maintaining there was no one else around other than the victim and the attacker. It's starting to seem like that must be how it really happened. It's beginning to seem like there's nowhere to run. Well, that didn't stop Mr. Natsume, did it? He fled the scene all too convincingly. Thank you. I believe we have a reasonably clear idea of the situation just before the incident now. What happened in the crucial moments that followed? All of a sudden, one of them just collapsed on the floor, and the other scattered something before running off. Scattered something? What do you mean by that? Oh, well, I couldn't quite make out what it was at the time, but then we got closer, we realized what it was. Didn't we, darling? What? Oh yes, that's right. It was some old books. I see, old books. Yes, sir. The culprit had dropped a number of them, all around where the victim lay on the pavement. Indeed, as clearly pictured in this photographic print. That rotten Japanese man did that when he did the deed. Let's not forget that it remains to be established that the defendant was indeed the attacker. But we saw him. It was the man in the dock without question, sir. The mustache, the hunched back, the cat-like eyes, the taut mouth, the snub nose, everything. Any more insults you want to throw in? That's right, he looked down at that poor defenseless woman with those terrifying intense eyes, and then suddenly threw his books onto the pavement and ran away. I see. This is tough. It seems as though they're telling the truth here. May I remind the court that this unambiguous testimony comes from a policeman and his wife. Now please, continue. Yes, sir! He ran straight over, of course, and then went for help at a nearby police box. Was it your husband who went to fetch help? No, I went. I may not be a police officer myself, but I am the proud wife of one after all. Isn't that right, my darling? What? Oh yes, that's right. I asked Mrs. Beat to go. I was off duty by that point. But Bobby's never truly off duty, of course, so I felt obliged to stay and guard the scene. Very laudable, Mr. Beat. Preserving the scene of a crime is a task of considerable importance. That's why I said Patricia, you see. I told her where to find the right police box. Forgive my ignorance, but what do you mean exactly by the right police box? Depends on the crime's location, you see, as to who deals with it. Where the woman was stabbed wasn't actually on my beat. So I told Patricia the way to the police box for the beat the instant it fell in there so she could go and report it. I ran there as quickly as I could and asked for help from the Bobby on duty. There's nothing more potent than a young couple in love working together, you know. And thanks to your swift response, the case was quickly resolved. The actions of the two model citizens. Oh, please, you're making us blush. Isn't he, darling? Yes, sir. What Patricia said, sure. Let's move on, shall we? It was definitely that Japanese man in the dock. Rolly and I both saw him as clear as day. But surely you wouldn't have been able to see his face by the light of the gas street lamps, would you? He absolutely could. Us Londoners have exceptional eyesight, I'll have you know. Right. The light for the street lamps was more than enough. And my husband already told you that the fog was only light, didn't he? Yes, and what of the fog? We're famous for it across the globe, I believe. But it's an absolute menace to those of us who have to live with it, of course. Oh, it is, it is. When it's thick, you can't even see the hand at the end of your own arm. Yes, all right, I take your point. Now, could you stop shaking your husband about? The constant fog makes our eyes very sharp, you see. That's why we could tell you for sure and certain that it was that little Japanese man we saw. Can't we, darling? What? Yes, it was the accused, and no mistake. The mustache, the hunchback, the cat-like eyes, the taut mouth, the snub nose. Unmistakable, sir! As far as this couple's testimony is concerned, there can't be any question. It was Hoseki-san they saw running away from the scene of the crime. So that's it, is it? That's their entire testimony? What do you think, Mr. Naruhodo? Well, I hate to admit it, but on hearing the testimony, it really does seem as though Mr. and Mrs. Beat saw what they saw. Mr. Natsume running away from the scene on Briar Road that day. Yes, I feel the same. So if that's true, where does it leave us? The members of the jury are sure to call for a guilty verdict after this testimony. Oh no! Then what do we do? If Kazuma-sama were here, what are you trying to say? I think he would try to find a contradiction somewhere else within their testimony. What do you mean, somewhere else? Their statement about seeing Mr. Natsume is unequivocal. Calling that in question won't help. But if you could identify some other part of their testimony which appears to contradict the facts, you might be able to discredit them, to make the jury doubt that the pair's memory of the day is accurate. Oh, right. Put simply, we must focus on finding a discrepancy in these statements somewhere. If we don't, I'm afraid the trial may reach an early and unfavorable conclusion. Ugh, why do I always seem to be so up against it? Mr. Lawyer, sir, can I ask you something? Oh, yes, of course. What is it? Give me some water. Well, you keep asking us all these questions about everything we've told you, so... It seems like you don't believe our testimony. Is that right? Is it? Well, out with it. What? No. Oh, no, it's really not that at all. My husband's a policeman, remember? And I know what I saw. I remember every last detail. Everything. Like, oh, I know. What about the books the man dropped? I could tell you the names of every single one, I could. Every single one. And you dare to question how reliable my testimony is. That will do, Mrs. Beat. No, it won't do at all. That Japanese lawyer has no idea what I'm capable of. Even if I decide to forgive him for insulting us, don't think for a minute that Rolly will. He's asleep! I really didn't mean to cause offense. Please put your husband's fists down. Perhaps you would like the opportunity to supplement your testimony, Mrs. B. Might that appease you? Oh, thank you, my lord. That'll settle things nicely. Wouldn't it, darling? I can even tell you the names of the 4 books he dropped at the scene. Wait, 4 books? There's only 3 here.
Objection!
So, you're saying that there were 4 books? That's right, I remember all of them. The Picture of Monsieur Somebody, What's It Yearnings, A Meal for Someone, and The Thing Gun Me... What? Those aren't titles. I'm sorry, Mrs. Beat. But there is a fundamental flaw in that statement of yours. Oh no! What flaw? Simply that, at the scene of the crime, there were only 3 books, not 4. What? Have a good look at this photographic print of the scene of the crime. As you can clearly see, there are only 3 books. But, no, that can't be. I saw them. Oh, I know what it is. Yes, you can't fool me. Sorry. It's that big old lump of a dead body. The lady's so large, her corpse is blocking the view of the 4th book, that's all. Let's at least try to remember that the poor woman isn't dead, even if we're insulting her size. No, I'm sorry, Mrs. Beat. But Mr. Natsume could not possibly have dropped the 4 books you described. Why not? Fascinating. And from your assured tone, something you could readily substantiate with evidence, I presume. Ah, evidence. Counsel, you will present evidence to substantiate your claim or withdraw it. What proof do you have that the accused did not drop 4 books?
Take that!
The second-hand book receipt. He only bought 3 books. The evidence is right here, in the form of this bookshop receipt. From your books. Yes, this receipt details Mr. Natsume's purchases that day. But as you can see, only 3 books are listed. No! Therefore, Mr. Natsume would have only dropped 3 books at the scene of the crime. Which means that your powers of observation, madam, cannot be relied upon. So it cannot be denied that though you saw it was the defendant you saw, you could very well be mistaken. Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! No!
Objection!
It's plainly evident that it is your powers of deduction that cannot be relied upon, my learned Nipponese friend. What? What cannot be denied is that these 2 witnesses saw the accused running from the scene, a fact that you know very well you have no hope of disproving. What? So you've striven to avert attention from that by dint of some inconsequential discrepancies. Would that be fair? He sees right through me. But your plan has somewhat recoiled against you. What are you talking about? It's quite simple. Let me explain with a toast. To the policeman's wife, in an entirely accurate testimony, in every respect. Oh! You see, the matter is not up for debate. At the scene on Briar Road, a total of 4 books were most definitely found. But what about the photographic print? It only shows 3 books. Quite right. Only 3 can be seen in that print. That print? You mean to say? Allow me to present another. One that shows the victim's hand. I don't believe it! It's the 4th book! As you will observe, the 4th book was hidden from view in the original print by the victim's torso. No! No! Order! Order! There, you see? You see? Look at that! Look! Yes. It's just like I said, isn't it, my darling? Yes, sir! Patricia's always right, sir! Let us study the receipt for the books purchased by the accused on the day in question. Mrs. B, the titles once again, if you please. Oh, yes, of course. The picture of Monsieur somebody or other. The picture of Monsieur Lecoq. What's it, yearnings? Canterbury yearnings. A meal for someone. A meal for Gabrielle, in fact. As the court has just heard, the witness remembers the book's titles flawlessly, save for a few minor details. Mrs. Beat's powers of recollection can only be described as exceptional. Did you hear that, Rolly? The gentleman paid me a compliment. Yes, sir. Flawless, sir. Patricia is flawless. But there are only 3 books on the receipt, and Mrs. Beat mentioned 4. There's nothing surprising about that. Clearly the 4th book is that which is shown in this photographic print. I'm sorry, Counsel, but does that not seem odd? Why should the 4th book be omitted from the receipt? It's not odd at all, my lord. As the photographic clearly shows, the 4th book was found in the victim's clutches. In other words, it belongs to the victim. The victim was holding her own book? I wonder, what became of that 4th book? Obviously, it wasn't overlooked by the investigating officers of Scotland Yard. I have it here as evidence. You will submit that in the aforementioned photographic print to the court, please, Counsel. My pleasure, my lord. The second crime scene photograph has been entered into the court record. The 4th book has been entered into the court record. A book entitled The Lion's Pride, discovered in the victim's hand at the same... Wait... The Lion's Pride? Wasn't that the name of the book that Mr. Garadeb lost? The prosecution rests. Hang on. Let me look at this. I can't find anything out of place. Let me see. It's a book entitled The Lion's Pride. I'm afraid I don't know any English literature at all, so it wouldn't be something I've heard. Wait a minute. The Lion's Pride? That's strange. I think I have heard of a book by that name before. And very recently, too. It's a title I recognize too, Mr. Naruhodo. Oh, it's burned! Oh, look at this! The book has been badly burnt! You're right. You'd never be able to read it in this state, especially not the latter pages. What a terrible waste. Judging from the scorched edges of the paper, I think the damage must have occurred very recently. A book recently damaged by fire. Why does that seem to raise a red flag with me? My nose is itching. I have nothing further to add. What? You seem surprised, my learned friend, but your resistance until now has been in vain. Entertaining, yes, but futile. The spurious, longer route to the accused lodgings that you tried to establish in your summation examination, and the attempt of discrediting of the witness's powers of recollection in your cross-examination. Futile? I walked right into this, didn't I? You see, everything we've said is true. I heard his neck crack! Isn't that right, my darling?
Yes, Pat. Marry me, Pat.
So, perhaps the ladies and gentlemen of the jury would like to reconsider their positions? Should the court waste any more time on this Nipponese travesty? Or is the decision you have to make all too apparent already? You have heard all of the witnesses and seen all of the evidence. This trial has run its course. Mr. Naruhodo, I'm afraid we are in a terrible precarious position. I know, but if I fight back in the wrong way now, I could very well just make matters worse. Think, Ryunosuke. Think. What do you do now?
Objection!
I'm not done yet! No, my learned friend. It's over. That last cross-examination was your final chance to establish a credible defense, and you failed. The die has been cast. There's no more room for debate. Well, it might be over as far as you're concerned, but... I can't think of what to say! If I may, Lord Van Zeeks, it seems somewhat boorish to close down the debate at this point. Your insignificant little Eastern Isle must be a lawless hole indeed, for a lowly judicial assistant to have the audacity to intervene at a moment like this. Oh! I am, to my shame, still a very inexperienced lawyer, so you will have to forgive me, but I consider my assistant's advice essential and her opinions invaluable. Mr. Naruhodo! One of this land's great guiding principles is tolerance. So, the court will hear you, madam. Go ahead, Miss Susato. Please. Very well. Pray, what insight can you give us? What have we all overlooked in this matter that you see to fit pursue further?
Well, the court has been presented with new evidence, but only after the last cross-examination finished.
I see. And you believe that this new evidence warrants further examination, do you?
Mr. Naruto, what do you think? It's just possible that this new evidence might be the decisive proof we've been waiting for. The judge is sure to ask the members of the jury to announce their leanings in a moment. And of course, he's sure to ask you to explain what the crucial piece of evidence is and why. So we must take this opportunity to examine the newly presented evidence as thoroughly as possible.
Yes, I understand. And thank you, Miss Susato. This is it. Susato-san has managed to win us one last chance here. I can't let it go to waste. The defense wishes to present evidence, my lord. Very well. The defense may present one further piece of evidence. Evidence that apparently offers a profound insight into this case and has hitherto been overlooked.
Take that!
The evidence in question is what we can see from the newly presented photographic print of this crime scene. The fourth book, found in the victim's hand. We have already discussed the fourth book at length. Other than it being in the victim's grasp at the time of the incident, no significance has been attached to it. Pursuing the matter further would be a flagrant waste of the court's time, as you well know. Ah! Yes, I'm afraid, counsel, I must concur with the prosecution of this matter. When I afforded you this opportunity, you led the court to believe that the evidence in question contained a hitherto undiscovered clue. So I must insist that you elaborate, counsel. You'll identify this clue at once. Do I make myself clear? Oh, yes, my lord. It's, Mr. Naruto, I believe the prosecution is trying to avoid a thorough examination of the evidence, which means you may very well be on the right track. Yes, I think you might be right. So, counsel, precisely where is the vital clue to this case, which this fourth book conceals?
Got it!
I would ask the court to observe the back of the book in question. The back? What do you... Good gracious! It's been burnt to a crisp! So we have to ask ourselves, why was the victim clutching what is clearly an unreadable book? It is undeniably an extremely unnatural thing for her to have been doing.
Objection!
Unnatural, you say? And what of it, my Nipponese friend?
Oh!
Were I to concede the point, if it bears no relation to the case, there is nothing to discuss. So, should you wish to assert that this fire damage is some veiled clue as to what happened that day, pray, do enlighten us all. What truth does this charred book hide? A charred book? There's just one possibility here, which I can't quite bring myself to rule out. It's an outside chance, certainly, but worth a try. Alright, I'll explain my theory. Don't keep us waiting any longer then, counsel. Explain this theory of yours. What are you suggesting that you could ascertain from the fire damage that Saritomo has suffered? Its owner. My lord, the burn on the back of this book reveals a startling truth about the book's owner. I beg your pardon?
But we already know who the book belongs to. The victim was gripping it in her hand as she fell to the floor, after all. It's obviously hers. The question of how this book came to be in the victim's hand has yet to be answered. However, as to the questions of who the book really belongs to and where it originated, the defense has very credible answers.
Good gracious! How can you possibly? Very well. I'll play along with this futile attempt to delay your inevitable demise. But do remember, The members of the jury may well burn you if your little gamble goes awry. Counsel, the defense's response here is very likely to influence the final outcome of this trial. So tell the court, who do you claim as the owner of this burnt book?
Why, Mr. John Garrett, of course.
Take that!
I could probably have picked Mrs. Garrett as well, considering she's in the stand. The answer is that the book belongs to the couple who own the house where the defendant has his lodgings. A certain Mr. and Mrs. Garrett.
The landlords. The landlords.
And whether this is some extraordinary coincidence or some kind of fate at work, I don't know, but of all the people in London, one of the 6 chosen for jury duty in this courtroom today is none other than Mrs. Garrett herself. Oh my goodness, me? I think you must be mistaken, sir. I'm not Mr. Garrett's wife. I'm his maid. Things would be so much easier if you would just drop the pretense. Alright then, how about a simple question for you? Have you ever seen this book in Mr. Garrett's house? I would never presume to know all the books he keeps, sir.
This is outlandish behavior. This woman is the accused landlady, you say. You implicate this hard-working member of the public. You besmirch her without a shred of evidence. Your actions are unforgivable.
This is not mere conjecture. The defense happens to know that on the day in question, at almost exactly the same time as the victim was stabbed on the pavement below, another incident was taking place in the room on the top floor of Mr. and Mrs. Garrett's house.
Good Lord! What sort of incident, counsel?
A fire, my lord.
Afraid to say it was. Happened in the blink of an eye, you know. No place filled with smoke. Couldn't see a bally thing. Didn't take long for the fire to spread, of course. The bally furniture started going up as well. Worst of it is, I lost my favorite. Book called The Lion's Prize. The Lion's Pride. By Jove! The very same title that the subject of this debate!
Oh dear me!
This is risible. All you've told the court is that a book by the same name was involved in a fire, in which case it would be reasonable to assume that it was burnt to ashes. And entirely unreasonable to infer that it magically removed itself to the scene of the crime.
Perhaps it would make more sense if I told you that the cause of the fire was marital discord. Without going into details, it appears that Mrs. Garrett was considerably enraged. Apparently she continued to attack Mr. Garrett even amid the flames. Oh, how awful! I can't even imagine being so horrid to the one you love. Can you, Rolly?
Absolutely not, sir! My Patricia would never raise a finger against me, sir. Had all my favorite old novels in that case. But as soon as the fire got hold of them, that was it. Whoosh! Up in smoke. Then the wife started hurling things at me. There was I, back up against the window under heavy enemy fire. Incendiary books coming 10 to the dozen.
The man had his back up against the window, and he had burning books thrown at him?
Goodness gracious! Are you suggesting that the book was thrown through a window and landed coincidentally at the scene of the crime?
Objection!
No. A thorough investigation of the surrounding area was conducted the very evening of the incident, and there's no report of the Garrett's window pane being broken.
That's quite true. We also saw no sign of broken glass when we visited the Garrett household. But is it not conceivable that the window was open at the time and
not even remotely? Let us not forget the season and the chilling weather that accompanies it. No Londoner would ever leave a window open in the middle of winter. Ah! Does the defense postulate this scenario in all seriousness, counsel? Do you honestly claim that the book found at the scene of the scene was a flaming projectile thrown by Mr. Garrett's wife?
I believe it's a possibility, my lord.
That's quite enough!
Well, I hope that everyone can see you for what you are, you little foreign trickster. You call yourself a lawyer, but you're just a coward. A mean coward. Really? Claiming that our little tiff set the whole neighborhood alight. Honestly. Implying that I'm merely posing as a maid for appearance's sake. How could you? Nothing to do with this beastly case. None of it. All you've done is sully our family's name. No, I assure you, that was never my intention. Dragging an upstanding citizen's name through the mud simply to divert attention from your failing defense. I should box your ears, that's what I should do. It's utterly unforgivable.
Too right. Here we go. How long have we sat here now, listening to this Nipponese spouting out his fancy foreign theories? But think about it. At the end of the day, the only person who could possibly have stabbed the victim is that little hunchback with the mustache, and he ran away from the scene too.
I do declare you're right.
It's true.
Yes, what did I tell you?
Makes sense to me. Sorry? What's that? Well, it would appear that the ladies and gentlemen of the jury are once again in full agreement. What is your position, Lord Van Zeeks? In truth, my lord, I feel these have been unnecessarily protracted proceedings. But then, one must always exercise patience in order to savor the best vintage. No! Wait! The mystery of the fourth book still hasn't been... Oh, the heels! If books are your predilection, my learned friend, study them on your own time. What? No, forgive the discourtesy this time? Ahem. In that case, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will now state your individual decisions regarding the defendant's culpability for the court to hear.
Guilty. 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 Guilty.
Frame drop! Thank you for that ambiguous response.
That's twice now. It's over. Mr. Naruhodo, don't give up. Miss Susato, have you forgotten? The battle isn't over yet. You're not suggesting. Of course. The defense has the right to another summation examination at this point. You can still convince the jurors to change their minds. You have one more chance.
My lord, the defense has to exercise its right to a summation examination. You believe you still have tricks up your sleeve. I don't intend to trick anybody. I intend to cover the truth. There's no time to be downcast. As long as there's a chance, I have to stay strong and determined. Okay, Steve. Taking another sip of my water here. Yes. I have considered the defense counsel's request for further summation examination of the jury. And I have determined that the court must uphold the defense's judicial right to this procedure. So, counsel, you will now proceed with your second summation examination. I presume the jury is ready, Mr. Foreman. We are, my lord. Very good. In that case, I must ask each of you now to state clearly and concisely for the court the grounds on which you find the defendant guilty of this crime. The accused left behind evidence at the scene, didn't he? Those 3 books of his.
If there was some novel alternative explanation about how the victim was stabbed, I might reconsider. Even if the woman was throwing books, it can't be related to this crime if the window was closed, can it? Dear me, it was only a little book. Hardly life-threatening, even with a direct hit.
Look, I just want to get this over with. If I don't bring home some pay tonight, I'll be in a tiny bit of trouble. Come to think of it, we had a fire at home a while ago. It gave me the sneezes.
That didn't tell me a thing. Yes, considerably more tangible arguments from all members of the jury this time around, it seems. With one notable exception, of course. My learned-student friend was unable to find fault in the previous witness' testimony. So the court must accept the fact that it was indeed the accused seen fleeing from the scene. And moreover, no one else was even at the scene to commit the crime. Well, if the eyewitnesses are correct, it would seem as if the conclusion is somewhat set in stone. Ooh, hiccups. I fail to see how it could be argued any other way. That means, I'm afraid, that during the summation examination, it's essential that you establish some other tangible explanation for the facts. But how? What would even constitute a tangible explanation here? Isn't it obvious? Who stabbed the woman, and how? Those two details are all you need to provide. Simply give us a name and a method by which the attack was conducted. And there I was thinking this might be hard. But Mr. Naruhodo, you have to do it. Otherwise this really will be where the trial ends. Ugh, no pressure then.
That's quite enough preamble. Proceed with the summation examination, please. I presume you are prepared, counsel.
Oh, yes, my lord. All right, Ryunosuke, focus your mind now. Whoa, slap them cheeks! Clearly the key to this summation examination is going to be juror number 4, the maid, or should I say Mrs. Garadeb? We have a book that disappeared from the Garadeb's house on the evening of the incident, and the 4th book found in the victim's hand. There must be a way to link the two. Yes, that's what we have to find. Using every technique I've learned in my short career so far. Whatever it takes. Don't forget to keep an eye on Mrs. Garadeb and how she reacts, even to the things other people say. Okay, already I have a clear idea how I want to do this. We need to talk to the old man.
Hold it!
Does that have anything to do with your decision about the defendant's culpability in this case? Sorry, what's that? You'll have to speak up, lad. Could you tell us more about that fire? It was last winter. My grandchildren baked me a lovely cake on my birthday. It had 75 candles on top, it did. What a sight to behold it was. You put candles on a cake? Was it some kind of devil worship? Of course not. It was an angel cake. To celebrate my birthday, of course. Seems that's a common custom here in Great Britain, Mr. Naruhodo. Anyway, I mustered all my puff to blow them out. Only I must have blown wrong somehow. The flames didn't go out, but candles went flying all over the room. The furniture caught and everything went up. The whole place filled with smoke. Definitely sounds like devil worship to me. And by the sneezes, I presume you mean a cold. But how did you catch a cold from a fire? What a fiasco it was. The grandchildren, bless them, threw water over me as they tried to put out the flames. And then, because the whole room had filled up with smoke, of course, we had to open all the windows to clear it. Windows. The biting winter air rushed over me like the devil dancing on my grave, it did. I caught a terrible cold from it. It put me in a hospital for a while. I won't forget that birthday in a hurry. I knew it was devil worship all along, but something about this old man's story is playing on my mind for some reason. We need to demonstrate who, apart from Mr. Natsume, could have attacked the young woman on the street, as well as how he or she could have done it. Yes, but once again, the jurors' statements are full of personal prejudice. A lot of them seem convinced they're right, even in the face of logical arguments to the contrary. I think you're going to need to pit them against each other to force them to accept an alternative explanation. Yes, I don't necessarily need to find contradictions between their assertions. Just a connection, but might do the trick. Alright, I see what I can do. If anything stands out, I'll go in for a strike. That's the spirit.
Okay, now, yours and the old man's are the ones that sound off.
Objection.
These two juror statements clearly contradict one another. They do? How exactly, counsel? Don't point at me again. I told you it wasn't me. What's that you say? Speak up, lad. Speak up. Juror number 3, do you see? Oh, me? See what, sir? Did you hear juror number 6's account of his birthday celebrations last year? It seems, despite being a Londoner, he once opened his windows in the middle of winter. Well, yes, of course, because it was an emergency. I mean, obviously, if the room was filled with smoke from a fire, then you'd be mad not to open up the... Oh! Exactly. On the day in question, at the time of the incident, there was a fire in the Garadeb household, and Mr. Garadeb had the following to say about it. The whole place filled with smoke.
Oh my.
Oh, Mrs. Garadeb! Nope! Juror number 4, do you have something to say about that? Mrs. Garadeb! Oh, dearie me! What is the meaning of this? How dare you imply that I'm hiding who I really am? It's imperative that you confirm something for the court. So please, it's time to drop the pretense now. What is it? When the fire started in your house that day, did you or your husband open the window? What? I beg your pardon. What are you insinuating? The room would have been thick with smoke after the carpet and bookcase caught fire as they did. In a situation like that, it's inconceivable that you wouldn't have opened the window. And what if we did? Oh, all right then. Yes, you're right. My husband was frantically trying to open the window, which can't have been easy since I continued to give him a justly deserved book battering. Even though your house was on fire? Oh, you never stop throwing until the anger subsides. It would be terribly bad for the nerves to do otherwise. Of course. I should have realized. That's a significant step forward, Mr. Naruhodo. You managed to establish that the window was open. We simply must have that added to Mrs. Garadeb's formal statement. Okay, let's press you.
Hold it!
You're still in a hurry. You just want to get this over with? How can you sit there and say something like that? The man's future is at stake here. Well, him and me both then, like I said before. What? I told you already, I'm a day laborer, aren't I? If I don't bring home some readies with me tonight, you'll find me floating face down in the Thames tomorrow morning. What? You heard me. My missus isn't one to mess about, you know. She can be fierce, believe you me. Another shining example of marital bliss, then. A situation like this cropped up the other day. It was, well, you know, it's funny, but I can't quite remember. Sorry. It was too frightening, that's the thing. I must have blocked it out. Helpful. I wonder if Mr. Beat will ever be dragged into the Thames by his scarf. Don't even go there, Miss Sisypho. There must be some way to jog his memory about this.
Hold it!
Alright, let's press on Mrs. Garadeb now. The fourth book found at the scene of the crime shows very obvious signs of fire damage. And the title of the book is The Lion's Pride. Same title, in fact, as the book that Mr. Garadeb told us he had been reading. Well, I really couldn't say. On the day in question, did you or did you not throw at your husband the copy of The Lion's Pride that he had been reading? I did. It was the first thing I could lay my hands on, so I hurled it straight at him. And now you come to mention it, yes. He was rather enjoying reading it, you're right. Why did you not reveal this information to court from the outset? Because I couldn't, you insolent little man. I didn't remember. At times like that, you pick up and throw whatever you could lay your hands on, as well as you know. I really don't. Barely noticed I was throwing a book, much less the title of it. Oh, hello.
Excuse me.
What is it, juror number 5? You know something? I've remembered what it was. That memory I'd blocked out. Ah, it was listening to what this granny was saying. Brought it all flooding back. Who are you calling a granny, you cheeky devil? I'm Mrs. Garrett with the maid, I'll have you know. The man doesn't even flinch. Please tell me that's not because he's so used to being hit all the time. It was about 2 weeks ago now. I just got back home from after work, like. I put my hand in my pocket for the wages I'd just earned that day, and I nearly died. There was a hole. Every last penny had dropped out. Oh dear, what a disaster. You haven't heard the half of it, boy. Oh. The wife was cutting up some chicken at the time. I could hardly get the words out, but I told her straight. I've lost a day's wages, love. Next thing I knew, the blade was whistling past my ear. Stuck it to the wall next to me, it did. About an inch deep. She threw a knife at you?! No words, just terror. I could smell it then, you know. That god-awful stench of the Thames. I was sure I was going to end up face down in the muddy banks that night, I could tell you. Now, that's a real disaster, isn't it? I'll never use the word lightly again. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is this. When women lose their rag, they'll throw anything at you. Knives, hatchets, hammers, you name it. Mr. Naruto, you mustn't think that all women are so short-tempered and unrefined. No, I wasn't thinking that. Throwing household objects at people is, well, so uncivilized. At least attack with honor, using a bow or the like. A bow?! What? Attack? Who are you going to attack? Never mind. Anyway, this man's words could be rather significant, I think. Alright, we'll come back to the bow and arrow thing later, if I dare. Now, I'm pretty certain I pit him and number 4 together. Or... wait, no. Pit him and number 2.
Objection.
These two statements clearly have a deeply significant connection. Good grief, you mean they don't contradict each other? Explain, counsel, at once. Juror number 2, do you think perhaps that this could be one such novel alternative? Oh my, whatever do you mean? An alternative explanation as to how the victim was stabbed in the back. What are you talking about? We've demonstrated that the 4th book, The Lion's Pride, that was found at the scene of the crime, originated in Mr. Garrett's room on the top floor of his house. Therefore, it is equally possible that some other object beside the book could have found its way from the Garrett household to the street below. What's that now? After all, Mrs. Garrett could have thrown any number of different objects at her husband. Isn't that right, juror number 4? What are you insinuating now, you little beanpole? I'm beginning to think that, ever since the true origins of this book came to light, perhaps she's had a feeling this might be what happened. Now you listen here, you Eastern Gala. As the foreman of this jury, I had to demand a straight answer. You give us this yarn about some other object making its way out of the house, but what? What was it? I'm really taking a big gamble here. That was a bold accusation to make, but I haven't any real evidence to back it up. But I'm certain that at the very least this warrants further investigation. Alright, Mr. Foreman, I'll try to explain the defense's theory. The other object that found its way from the Garrett household to the scene of the crime was this knife. Juror number 4, Mrs. Garrett. What now? I must apologize in advance for this. But I need you to confirm something else for the court. This knife. Have you ever seen this knife before? Oh, good Lord, counsel, what on earth are you doing? That's the weapon that was launched to the victim's back, man. My lord, remember that when the victim was attacked, Mr. and Mrs. Garrett were in the throes of an argument. Mrs. Garrett was hurling anything she could at her husband, who'd been backed up against the window. A window that had been opened to clear the smoke, and through which a book sailed to land at the crime scene. You can't seriously believe that. The book was found in the victim's grasp. Are you saying that it flew out of the window and across the street to land neatly in her hand? Huh, Even my missus hasn't got a name like that.
Yes, I admit, there are many details we don't yet understand. But that's the point. That's precisely why. We must not allow this trial to end. Not right now.
Oh my.
Ugh! Mrs. Garadeb, your answer, please. Have you seen this knife before or not?
Oh,
And she fainted.
My lord!
I wish to change my decision. I'm a woman of my word, after all.
Thank you, madam.
Yes, I agree. I certainly didn't see this coming, but I just don't think it would be right for this trial to come to an end now with so many unanswered questions.
Mr. Foreman! I'd have to agree. Not that I think the granny didn't mind.
Yes, you know what? I'm not quite happy about this at the moment either.
All together now, ladies and gents.
We did it! Oh, congratulations, Mr. Naruhodo!
So, as a result of the defense's summation examination, a number of jurors' leanings have changed. 2 jurors called guilty against 4 now calling incident. Accordingly, the opinion of this court is divided, and this trial will continue. Now then, Lord Van Zeeks, how does the prosecution wish to proceed? This trial is rapidly descending into a farce. Delightful. Like a corked wine, the first few sips are bitter enough. But what follows is so repugnant, it's good for nothing save to gutter.
If I may, Lord Van Zeeks, the defense has just put forward a credible alternative explanation for what happened.
Credible? Is that your considered opinion, Mr. Foreman? The defense's argument is a joke to which I barely know how to respond. But let me start by insisting. And you must all familiarize yourselves better with the relative positions of those places being discussed.
What do you mean by that? What's his angle this time?
It should already be more than apparent that between the crime scene and the Garadeb household runs a rather wide street, Briar Road. Which means that the distance of the Garadeb's house to the scene is some, 15 yards.
Let me see, 15 yards. That's around 14 meters. 14 meters? Oh, that's a little farther than I had imagined.
And, as you ladies and gentlemen of the jury rightly noted as having portentous significance, the 4th book was found in the victim's clutches. In other words, the smoldering book, wantonly hurled by the lady of the house, traveled some 15 yards, to land on the opposite side of the road, neatly between the collapsed victim's fingers and thumbs. Is that your final conclusion, my learned and deluded friend? And did the jackknife follow a near-identical trajectory to plunge in the middle of the victim's back? This fantasy is somewhat stretching the notion of having a bad day for the victim, I think. Even those pathetic serialized detective stories have more believable plots.
There's nothing I can say to that. That prosecutor loves the sound of his own voice. Miss Susato, serialized detective stories are pathetic, are they? How dare he? Maybe let's pick our battles here. My lord, might I be allowed to speak?
As judicial assistant, you may speak for the defense, yes. Go ahead.
The prosecution may consider the idea a fantasy, but what the defense has postulated was believable enough to persuade the jury to change its leaning. And as such, the court has a duty to explore this alternative explanation as thoroughly as possible. To that end, juror number 4, Mrs. Joan Garadeb, must be called to testify and submit to cross-examination.
Saints alive! A cross-examination of a juror! Order! 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 Well, this is highly irregular. It is unprecedented for a member of the jury to be summoned to the witness stand. Hey! Don't throw the bottle into the galley! And unnecessary. Lord Van Zeeks! There are already witnesses in the stand whose testimony the defense may further cross-examine. If my learned friend's farcical theory has any truth in it, then both a burning book and a jackknife must have flown through the sky before this couple's eyes. And we must assume that they would be able to testify accordingly. What say you, witnesses? Yes, sir. Constable Rolly Beat, reporting for duty, sir. Well, good morning, officer. Sorry for dozing until now, sir. I haven't slept for a month on account of a villain who's appeared on my beat, sir. Oh, they are so heroic, these London bobbies. Patricia, my darling, I've been neglecting you, but no more. Oh, Rolly, my hero, you make me swoon. Ugh! That was horrible for me to read. Very well. I hereby reject the defense's request. Oh. In order the witnesses in the stand to testify again. State forthwith before the court any details pertaining to the defense's alternative explanation of events. Yes, sir. So, next Tuesday, when I pull up this Let's Play again, we shall be continuing with the second part of the trial. We have made it to Constable Beat's report. We will be continuing from here and finishing up the remainder of this episode on Tuesday. So, thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the Let's Play, please leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to check out Mother Roy's new page or click the link in the description below to achieve your dream of being my Kaka Ludicrous or 2. You won't be disappointed. And of course, don't forget to click that little bell button if you wish to be notified whenever I upload a video or a live stream to my channel. And most importantly, if you wish to see a left side done, you can do so by checking out my playlist section. All my videos are there, archived for your viewing entertainment, so you can watch Let's Plays like God of War, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Sword Art Online, Fatal Bullet, and many, many more. Thank you all for watching. It's always your host, Jeremiah Shadow, saying along Z, and I'll see you in the next adventure. Goodbye, everyone.